Wow, good morning and welcome to this edition of Dialogue Box on BlossomNigeria. Every day is getting better for us, and we believe that it should be getting better for our nation. Even though we have a lot of pain in the air, we are talking about how the deregulation of the fuel subsidy sector has affected petroleum price products, or rather the price of petroleum products. So right now, a lot of Nigerians are still, they don't get it. They have not gotten the full communication from the government, and they are wondering what led to it and what should be the way forward, because right now prices are rising by the day, and even like we said yesterday, the prices of food items are also on the increase because of challenges that they encounter in the movement of goods and services. So today we are going to be reviewing the government's action, even though government has given us some very solid reasons why they did what they did by full deregulation of the sector, removal of fuel subsidy, and seeing to it that the prices of petroleum products are now to be determined by market forces and not by government agencies or incentives any longer. So if that is the case, is it something that is sustainable in Nigeria, and do we think that we can cope with that on the economy? That's the consequences and the resultant effect of this government decision on the economy. So we'll give you some background details, and we'll be joined this morning by our analyst, Mr. Harrison Ogebu, and he will give us some very objective aspects based on the government angle and the people's angle, so that everybody can know and understand how to work with it going forward. All right, we have it that the People's Democratic Party, PDP, has called on the federal government to immediately rescind its decision on the increase in the price of petrol to 160 naira per litre. So the party gave the advice in a statement issued by its National Publicity Secretary, Kola Ologbondiyan, in Abuja on Monday. So Mr. Ologbondiyan said the demand by the citizens was an immediate downward review in the pump price of fuel, adding that the attempt to justify the increase to 160 naira was unacceptable to Nigerians. And being the opposition party, they have some very good reasons they have given. So the question then is, does the government have sufficient reasons to back the subsidy removal? And its resultant effect on the economy is also what we are going to look at. Then they also think that the government has no basis trying to compare the fact that, according to the government, they said that petroleum products are still one of the cheapest across Africa, and the opposition guys believe that the government should not even say so, because the buying power is different in most of these countries and they can't compare such to the Nigerian populace. So while we are waiting for our guests to call in, don't forget to also reach us. You want to send your opinion, your comment on 08030887339. So our numbers are on the screen. You can always reach us. Then we can also get your reaction to this on our website, www.blossomnigeria.com, and we also have it that in our YouTube channel. You can still reach us there and make your comments, as you are also a subscriber. But make sure you or we appeal to you to make a comment as we work towards getting enough feedback for this. All right, then as we do this, let's have a quick review based on some information available to us that the PDP has totally rejected the attempt to hinge the increase in fuel prices on presumed removal of oil subsidy. So the party described it as illogical, predicating the increase in the price of the commodity on a faulty comparison. That's what they called it, a faulty comparison with costs in other countries. So the PDP says that the comparison is not correct, as the daily standard of living, the purchasing power, and the living wage of the average Nigerian in the last 5 years could not be compared with what was obtainable in those other countries. Meanwhile, there have been strong indications that the federal government may not reverse the new fuel pump price because it is determined to end the culture of fuel subsidy, which officials say has got about 10.78 trillion naira in 14 years. So in addition to this, the government is also not contemplating a review of the new electricity tariffs, which we will take time to analyze tomorrow. But for today, we'd like us to look fully into the fuel or the petroleum product sector. What do you think is a way forward? Is the government right to say that, okay, because we are removing fuel subsidy, so prices can go as high as possible, like we said yesterday, the private sector can fully take charge of that and say, okay, now we are also reviewing prices to 170 per litre, 180 per litre. Is there any way forward for Nigerians? So these are the things we're looking at in our discussion today. Then the presidential spokesman, Garba Shehu, has also said in his statement that President Muhammadu Buhari removed the subsidy on petrol and electricity to stop the mismanagement of taxpayers' funds. That's what he called it, mismanagement of taxpayers' funds, and eliminate corruption associated with subsidies. So the government is said to be determined to end fuel subsidy regime because only a few Nigerians have been benefiting from it. So with an average yearly spending of about 1 trillion naira, the federal government says it cannot continue with its fuel subsidy regime because it does not benefit most Nigerians. Then the government also believes that there is too much corruption. That's what they say, too much corruption. And they must have reasons for this associated with the petroleum subsidy fund, that's a PSF. They say marketers use it to get frivolous claims or to get paid for frivolous claims, and the subsidy is said to have been reduced to a matter of figures by these marketers without corresponding action. All right, so we take a call from our guest analyst now and we'll continue from there. Hello, sir. Good morning, sir.
Am I on to Blossom Nigeria?
Yeah, this is Dialogue Box on Blossom Nigeria. You are welcome, sir.
Okay.
All right, sir.
My name is...
We have your details. You are our guest analyst, and you don't need to introduce you. This is Mr. Harrison Ogebu calling in and giving us his own take on what is currently going on. So you're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Now, a quick one. We have Nigerians are still not, they don't get it. Let me use that word because a lot of times government may have some very sound reasons for doing what they do by, like for the removal of fuel subsidy. Government believes that is a good one for Nigerians, but Nigerians don't think so because it has led to increase in the fuel price, and to them, that is more, in quote, more suffering for Nigerians. So what is your take on that, sir?
Thank you. Your background information is what Fela referred to as government magic.
Okay.
And you see, government magic has been a prevalent anomaly in successive governmental regimes in this country.
Okay.
And as such, we don't blame anybody for not trusting or being the government because they haven't shown integrity, they haven't shown to be honest, they haven't shown to have the yearnings of the led at heart, especially in their policy formulation. So it is proper, it is right for people to express this kind of distrust, to express dissatisfaction, and above all, express the frustration.
Okay.
That's just the way it is.
Okay. Now, with this distrust and dissatisfaction, do we still commend the government for the fuel subsidy removal? Because we remember that some few years ago, that was a major agitation with the full deregulation of the sector, removed the fuel subsidy. But now it has been removed and is also leading to increase in the prices of petroleum products. So how can we balance the equation here?
Thank you. You know, subsidy or subsidization or the regulation are not mere nomenclatures. These are economic concepts that have implications.
Yeah.
And if upheld, the regulation is an economic mode that is in use by most countries that are into oil production.
Okay.
If upheld rightly, it is supposed to augur well for us.
Okay.
Again, removal of subsidy. I remember Buhari addressing that question when he was told about who is subsidizing what. Okay, removal of subsidy wouldn't just result in the hike in fuel pump. That's the truth of the matter. Until there was a hike in fuel pump, we didn't know about removal of subsidy. Removal of subsidy is not just what happens. When such things happen, it would have been captured, it would have been meditated a budgetary period after you have removed subsidy.
Okay.
You know, so the point I'm making is that we must fault this government in the way they have carried on with the affairs of this nation. That is one. On the other side of it, if we deregulate properly, appropriately, it is the way forward.
Okay.
So the challenge is that all the attempt to have made that privatization and leaving the forces of the forces of demand and supply to rule our economic engagement in this country haven't worked well because we don't do it rightly. I knew the role the likes of H.E. Atiku Abubakar, His Excellency, played in the privatization of most enterprise, including former NEPA. Today is one of those complaining about the activities of discos and gencos, but it was one of those that sold to people that do not have the capacity to handle, people that have brought us to this quagmire. So the point I'm making is this: if we want to deregulate, please can we deregulate? And if we're not deregulating, don't confuse people. It is not an emergency. Government is not an emergency. Economic activity shouldn't be emergency.
Okay.
So if we want to deregulate, can we go back to the sources of oil well? Can we go back to the activities, economic activities of NNPC? It has to be expensive. It has to be inclusive. It's not just the hiking of where it hurts the electorate or the citizens as it were. Let it also hurt the owners of oil pump. Let it also hurt those that have interest in the operations and economic activities of NNPC. So let us regulate expressly. Let it not be one-sided to make it better for the bourgeois and make it much more difficult for the ordinary Nigerians in quotes.
Okay. All right. Now, as we talk about, we always say going forward, can the government, like what the PDP is asking the government to do, to resign this decision and go back on what they've already, according to them, implemented? Is it possible?
Okay. Receding policy is a possibility anytime, any day. Okay? Especially when it's not even law. Even if it is law and the best you can do is to amend. So it is possible they recede the policy on this. But my point is this: what is even the policy trust? There is no policy trust. It was until fuel was increased that here we will remove subsidy. It's not supposed to be emergency. Here is my point. If we allow the forces of demand and supply dictate the economic activities, that is pure capitalism. And Nigeria is a capitalistic state. That is pure capitalism. But I'm telling you, with what has happened now is just one-sided thing, because those that influence the production of oil, the sales and the marketing of oil, still have the backings of government. Government still has its hand in the production, in the sales. In fact, NNPC is not an independent enterprise. So, and until NNPC becomes independent, there's no deregulation. We want to see the relationship between NNPC and the oil marketers. I'm talking about the independent marketers. We want to see it also be based on the causes or on the forces of demand and supply. Let it not be one-sided. So I am of the view that Mr. Timothy Silva, who spoke or who is addressing or who is starting the cause, is not saying the truth. What has happened is that they have been overwhelmed by the challenges of post-COVID, and in their thinking, the best way to do it is to leave the burden on average Nigerians.
Okay.
That's the truth of the matter. And they were quick to sing the song of subsidy deregulation because these are deceptive concepts that they use. If you want to deregulate, can you deregulate properly? Let us see that deregulation in the activities of NNPC.
Exactly.
Let there be bidding of contract. Let there be bidding of crude. Let us see it. Let the forces of demand and supply also bind and regulate the activities of NNPC. Until that happens, then it's not the regulation. It's just heightening the stress and making the average Nigerian bear the burden of the dip in revenue.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Mr. Harrison. We really appreciate that. So, a word of advice for the president, as we have said, is that if you want to deregulate, then fully deregulate, and let us see it on the books of NNPC, their relations, their bidding for contracts and everything. So it's a very good one, and we really appreciate that. So then, what will you tell Nigerians now? We are still hearing sounds of protests are still trying to come up. A lot of Nigerians are trying to look for different means and ways to express their anger. What will you say to Nigerians now as a last word from you, sir, for this edition?
First and foremost, protest is civil. Protest is the language of the unheard.
Okay.
So if Nigerians feel that they've not been heard by the government that was purportedly put in place by them, they reserve the right to protest. So anybody that wants to protest should go ahead and protest in a very civilized or civil manner. That's one.
Okay.
That's one. Secondly, we should also continue with our demands of getting things rightly done in this country. This country belongs to all of us. It doesn't just belong to the political class.
Exactly.
All of us own it. And this is also a good wake-up call, even as we prepare for 2023.
Okay.
So this will let us analyze, criticize, critique characters that we want to throw or line behind for new political dispensation. So it's a time of appraisal, it's a time of assessment, it's also a time of preparing ourselves for the future.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. It's always a pleasure hearing from you. We appreciate your call and the valid points you made. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Wow, that was Mr. Harrison there, and he has given us some very, very sound points. In other words, government cannot tell us that they are deregulating now, and it's like he said, it's not an emergency response. It's something you should plan for. It's something you should be prepared for, and not midway into the execution of your budget, you just come up and say, yeah, I'm deregulating, and it's not even fully, it's not reflected in all the government-owned petroleum companies like the NNPC and co. So what is the main deregulation you did? Is it just to hike prices? And that's why Nigerians are complaining. So it's not good enough. So we're telling the government now, go fully on the angle or aspect of the regulation, if that is where you want to go or the route you want to take. But if not, then let everything still be done with the subsidy regime in place. And if you are removing the subsidy regime, let the forces of demand and supply rule the market based on your full deregulation. So that's our message to you today. And tomorrow we'll be talking about the electricity sector. So whatever else we need to know, let's have our reasons, what we think the electricity, the GENCOs and the DISCOs should do to be more effective, even in disseminating information and different other things that Nigerians require at this point in time. And with the increase in tariffs, will it improve? And even with that, a lot of Nigerians are still not happy. So government needs to look at these decisions again, and if possible, resign them and look at how to make them better and more comfortable for Nigerians, because that is the essence of governance. All right. Thank you so much for staying with us on this edition of Dialogue Box. We look forward to having you tomorrow, and we'll talk more. And like we say, we are talking the nation in the right direction. Thank you for being there. I'm Blossom, and I believe in the Nigerian dream.